What's going on, everybody? How you doing? This is Dr. Samori Swygert, and today I just want to throw something at you to get you thinking. You know, whether you agree with me or not, it's really not any of my business. But for God's sakes, just think. So I want to compare and contrast for those that have seen I think it's a horror or thriller series, it's a movie called Saw. I think they have about like six parts to it, but it's the movie called Saw, and basically you have this guy who's dying of cancer, and because he feel like he's kind of been forsaken and neglected, and his case has been handled inappropriately and ethically, he chooses to take out this vengeance, this vendetta against people that he feels is doing wrong. And he puts them in all these different. He basically causes them to kill themselves, and in the process, kill somebody else by putting them in certain situations. So, I kind of want to talk about how this movie Saw, when you sit down and you extract the bare principles out of it, and you can extract the real principles about what this guy is doing, how he's controlling and manipulating situations, how that is very eerily similar to how some portions of black on black crime, black genocide in our communities occurs. I am aware, I've seen both sides of the black on black crime argument. Whereas, yes, we are engaging and killing our own brothers and sisters, and it's a tragedy. It's also important to know that as we say that, a lot of this stuff is engineered, orchestrated, and manipulated from a higher level. And what we're seeing is the carnage that if you limit the options of people and you control the environment, almost like an experiment, a social experiment, you can almost forecast what human behavior is going to do. So I kind of want to make that connection and just get you to think about it. So think about the movie Saw if you've seen it, and then think about what I'm going to talk about now. So if you look at the situation in the movie Saw, what do you see? It creates a real-time do or die dilemma that's timed. So in those situations, you always see these victims that have been kidnapped and placed in this isolated environment that's well controlled. It's engineered, it's orchestrated, it's manufactured. It is manipulated by this guy that nobody seems to really know, really. And they're on this time thing, like, it's like, oh, you have an hour, you have 30 minutes, you have 2 minutes to, get through this contraption, or, your head is going to get blown off, or you've got to kill this person to get the keys to get free. So it's that real time fear, that real time do or die scenario that is timed. And if you look at a lot of our inner city communities, especially in some of the most impoverished cities where, we may talk about housing tenements and projects, people are living on this month to month, check to check. If I don't get this check, I'm out on the street. I'm not going to be able to afford X, Y, and Z. And you're up against a time frame, and there's only 24 hours in a day. There's only so many shifts you can work. And if you don't have these bills paid, your situation has just descended lower into more problems. So that's one thing. The other thing, I said that the environment is designed, is engineered, is orchestrated, is booby-trapped and rigged, almost like an experiment. And we'll go into that later. But remember what I just said. Now, the real culprit, the perpetrator, most people will look at, like when we look at black on black crime, we'll look at the kid that shot that other person or stabbed that person whatever the case may be. And we'll call that person the perpetrator, the culprit. I'll call them the immediate perpetrator, the immediate culprit. But oftentimes there is a hand, it's that unseen hand that is controlling situations that we're also not really addressing. People don't want to talk about it. People want to act like there isn't something else behind the scenes that's causing a lot of our youth to engage in these heinous crimes. You're not going to talk about the mafia bringing drugs and guns into the community. You're not going to talk about that. The only thing you're going to say is, oh, you should have the discernment and the moral decisiveness to do right. Yeah, but you can try and do right all you want to, but when you are put in a situation where it's do or die, what are you going to do? Are you going to push the survival button when the rent is due and you don't have that money? When you have people gunning for you and gunning at you and the only thing that you can do is run or shoot back? What do you think happens in a lot of these cases? See, we often can quarterback and talk about stuff in the safety of our middle class homes, but we're not out inside these project tenements where people are living almost a gladiator lifestyle. So let me continue. The real culprit, he has control of all the variables in this well-controlled environment, and he manipulates the factors to a predetermined outcome and forecast. If you look at Saw, that guy had that wherever they were, whether they were in a warehouse, some abandoned building, he had that warehouse, that abandoned building booby-trapped. He had it designed. He had it rigged, all to his control. Everything was controlled by him. You have to watch the movie, or have had to watch the movie, for you to understand exactly what I'm talking about. You will then have a great appreciation for my comparison. The other thing, the perpetrator provides and supplies the weapons, the tools, the instruments, and devices of destruction, and makes them conveniently accessible. If you look at the movie, you've seen the movie, right? Don't comment in the comment section if you've never seen Saw or any of the series. But if you've seen the movie, you notice he provides all the weaponry, whether it's guns, whether it's saws, butcher knives, whatever the case may be. He makes it readily accessible and hands reach for you to grab. And that's how I'm talking about with the guns that are placed all around the community, the drugs. The thing is, when you look at African Americans, name me a few black-owned gun manufacturers. Name me 5 right now. Right now, I know that you're not going to be able to do it because that is probably few and far between. I can't even name 5 black-owned gun manufacturers. Then you have to ask yourself, how are a lot of these guns and the types of guns getting into these communities where there are no gun stores? So how are you getting bulk supplies? I'm not talking about, one 9mm, one Glock, one shotgun. When you have an arsenal of AK-47s, they call them choppers, or AR-15s, multiple rounds, hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunitions. Yeah, you've got the Glocks. Yeah, you've got the 9mm. You've got your 40 cals. You've got all of these flooding into the community when there is no gun manufacturer around there. It's no black-owned gun manufacturer, like they're giving them the hookup. And they're not inside, there's no gun in these places where, guns are illegal and not in that city. How are they getting there? There is some insidious, nefarious, surreptitious, underhanded supply that is infusing these guns and these drugs to the streets that are readily accessible for black youth to use. Right? Just like in the movie Saw, I'm going to put all my weaponry right there for you to use. Whether you kill yourself or kill somebody else, doesn't make a difference. It all goes to my purpose that I have a vendetta against you, and I'm going to make sure that I get it off. Because in the movie, it was, okay, yeah, you're going to kill yourself and you're going to kill this person. Or one of y'all going to die. But either way, he had the vendetta for both people. Okay. Next thing in the movie. The victims are persistently screaming for help, relief, and a way out. Doesn't that sound very similar to what African Americans have been screaming and protesting, lobbying for decades, centuries? We've been constantly, persistently screaming for help, relief, and a way out. But just like the movie, your relief and your escape is accomplished only by killing your fellow person, your fellow brother, or the person you're there with. So yeah, you can get your relief, you can get some help, you can get your way out of the situation, but somebody's got to die. That is the premise behind that. All right, now let's go a little deeper. Now, the other thing is this: the situation. How and why does it happen that way? Because the perpetrator, the true perpetrator, the culprit, the puppeteer of the situation, he limits the moral, the legal, the peaceful, the nonviolent, and the productive alternatives and solutions. See, all those are specific in what I said. He limits the moral, the legal, the peaceful, nonviolent, and productive alternatives and solutions. When you start restricting solutions, choices, and options, you are basically forcing a person into criminality. You're pushing and steering a person into criminality. The other thing is this: all the while, the perpetrator remains relatively anonymous, relatively faceless, unidentified, and unsuspecting. If you look at the movie Saw, you'll notice that the victims never really see that person face to face. He'll always present what? That masked puppet. That masked puppet that comes in on that little tricycle or shows up on the television screen. Ironically, on the television screen. But you never see the real guy, who is the old guy dying of cancer, the old white guy that's dying of cancer. They never really see him. They usually end up getting in a situation by being drugged, and then they wake up in these situations, which is ironic too. You end up getting drugged, and then you end up in a violent situation. So you never see this person, so you don't really know who to point the finger to. As a victim, the police don't know who to really point the finger to. But it's easy to arrive on the scene and say, well, here's the two dead bodies, or here's the person that killed that person. But you don't know the more in-depth situation, the intricacies behind it. Now, the other thing is this: he exerts and imposes these situations of torture to satisfy his own philosophy and own theories as to why these people deserve to die. He has a personal vendetta that to him seems justified. Now, many of the victims in the movie didn't do anything to him per se. They didn't kill him. He's still alive. He's dying of cancer and aging, but nobody killed him. Yet he's forcing these people to kill and be killed. Now, the other thing, peep this: he positions himself to rate, rank, prioritize, and appraise the worth of each victim's life. If you look at some of the scenarios and, what's going on in the movie, the other people are forced to kind of choose who is going to die and who's going to live. And if it's going to be me, then I got to make sure that you die. And that's, if you look at, a lot of our impoverished communities and the situations in the hood or ghetto, quote unquote, these are the situations that you see. It's like, it's almost like, well, compared to everybody else in society, I'm probably going to go ahead and I'm going to go at you because you're the closest thing to me in my situation that I feel like if I can kind of get you off of here, then that kind of frees up my space and opportunity to kind of stay alive a little longer. So I'm gonna go at you because you're the closest and you're in my same situation. Like, you talk about black on black crime, like you don't really see black people going to white communities, and I'm not don't because I know how trolls are on here and government trolls are on here. So, he's trying to incite, black people to go kill whites. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, though, you don't see blacks just saying, let's just go out to white communities and just go ahead and just kill whites. Or go to, Indian and Asian communities and kill Indians and Asians. We typically stay within our locale where we're suffering. And we inflict the hate. We inflict the mayhem and the murder and the torture on our own people that in our same situation. So that's what you typically see. The other thing is this: if you watch the movie, you see that the murders are sensationalized across the news networks. So, in the movie Saw and all the series, you always see like they'll have like the news episodes like, oh, the guy who's really controlling the murders, the old white guy that's dying of cancer, they nickname him Jigsaw. So they'll be like, oh, Jigsaw struck again, and X, Y, and Z, da 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 da. It's broadcast all over the news, but there's no real answers or solutions, and that's the same thing that we see with black on black crime. It's going to be broadcasted over all the networks. It's going to be sensationalized. Sometimes, because it goes on a lot, and a lot of these murders don't go on the news either. But you'll see that, and it's like it paints that picture, but there's no real answer or solution. It's just almost just like, wait, we're just throwing it up there, but that's about it. No solutions, nothing. Now, here's the other thing that I want to get at, because I know that there are a lot of people that will be like, oh, well, I was from the hood, I was from the ghetto, I made it out, there's no excuse, da 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 da. And just like the movie Saw, yeah, there's a few that happen to make it out. There are a few that will survive the mayhem, that will survive the carnage, that will survive the trauma and the mutilation that goes on inside the communities, and you'll make it out. Kudos to you. Now, if you make it out, why don't you come out and sensationalize your story and help talk about your methods of escape and what it took? Why don't you come back and give a debriefing? Don't just make it out and then cover up your trail, cover up your path so nobody else can find a way out. And then look at everybody else like, oh, well, that's just a tragic story. No. Just like the movie Saw, some people made it out. Some people that made it out, they made it to the next part of the movie. They helped out a little bit in trying to solve the case. So when you make it out, just like in the movie Saw, some make it out, make it your duty to give back and provide solutions, recipes, alternatives, so that other people can make it out also. Excuse me, I'm trying to fight a cold also. The other thing that was interesting when I'm making this comparative analysis of black on black crime, Black Genocide, and the movie Saw is this. The old white guy that's dying of cancer, he's aging, right? As he dies and ages, what you see happening in each part, like you have a part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, part 6, he has younger recruits that are now working under him, and he's training them to continue perpetuating and perpetrating this cycle of controlled, systematic butchery of people. And you can say that that's probably happening too. When you look at what's happening with black on black crime and you look at society, the different systems and policies that are in place, a lot of stuff hasn't changed. We think things have changed, times have changed for the good. But even though some of these people are dying, they are indoctrinating a lot of the younger generation to continue the same system so that that cycle never stops. It decreases competition for them. Now, let me make it a little bit more clear so people understand where I'm going with this. When I say limit your options, just like in the movie and everything, so we want to look at it like this. Why are people killing each other in black communities in X, Y, and Z? Before you get on your high horse and say, everybody wants to get on their sanctimonious, high moral ground, their good, upstanding, ethical citizen, as if they've never broken a law or anything like that. Listen, you're not perfect, all right? Now go ahead and put that down. When you close schools all around the country and specifically in inner cities, I know Philadelphia, they just came out with an article, I forget which newspaper was last week. They were saying they were basically closing 32 public schools down in Philadelphia. That's just Philadelphia. What do you think is going to happen when you are limiting and restricting their opportunity to gain access to an education? Right? You have just stripped away a component that allows for them to progress, because the more you know, the more you can perform and progress, the more that you can compete in society. What do you think happens when you allow for the proliferation and expanse of guns and drugs and narcotics into the community? What do you think happens when you not only just put like narcotics like coke, crack, heroin in the community, but then you got these synthetic designer drugs that got people going crazy in the streets? What do you think is going to happen? And you got people crowded in housing tenements and in, close, small cities. And people got to live with, people on these medications, these drugs, right? What do you think happens when you raise the rent and housing costs to unaffordable rates? So basically, people can't even afford to live. And there's only 24 hours in a day, so you can only work X amount of shifts. And if you still can't pay the bills, what happens? So now it becomes a situation of survival. And we know what happens when survival of the fittest occurs. Darwin already talked about that. What happens when you limit job resources and you manipulate hiring practices and you keep minimum wage stagnant? So your minimum wage in no way mirrors the cost and expense that you need to have a safe, comfortable, enjoyable life. What happens when you restrict career, educational, recreational, artistic, nutritional, and business resources and support? What happens? Don't tell me that they're not doing it, because we see this happening across the board. So when you have all of those removed, this is when you have gangs that are formed, because gangs only form for survival and support in do or die situations. See, when you have good resources and people get together, those are called organizations. When it's based on survival and do or die, that's when it's really termed gangs. Because the human survival instinct comes in, the do or die instinct comes into play. It's not about just getting money, it's about survival. Then, what happens when you pay millions of dollars to musicians to create destructive theme music, yet you fail to offer contracts to people that can create positive messages? So 24 hours a day, children are being brainwashed to this type of thing. Then what happens when you give instructional videos and how to do it yourself, homicide videos, by these music videos, movies, reality show behavior, what do you think happens then? So it's just the behavior is reinforced. So you're forced into a situation where everything that you need and everything that you want is unaffordable based on your legal job in a 24-hour period. So in a 24-hour period, while doing everything legal that you can, it's still not enough for you to reside in a safe, comfortable home or apartment in society. Yeah, people are going to kill each other just like in the movie Saw. And you make all the weapons and drugs readily accessible. And all you gotta do, the perpetrator just sits back and watch as we just blow our brains out, stab each other, kill each other. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, this is Dr. Samori Swygert signing out. This is how the movie Saw compares to black on black crime or Black Genocide. Dr. Samori Swygert. You can hit me on Twitter at DocSwag06. That's DOCSWAGG06. All right. Take care. Peace.